Welcome to ReConnect with Plant Wisdom. I'm your host, Tigrila Gardenia, nature-inspired mentor and leadership coach. In this podcast, I share ancient and modern knowledge from biology to spirituality about the wondrous ways in which plants can help you lead a naturally conscious life. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of ReConnect with Plant Wisdom, and this is a good one for you. I am super excited to have Fontaine Burnett with me. Now, Fontaine and I met in actually Montenegro, right? That's where we were. We were in Montenegro. I was giving a presentation at a kind of festival / conference about green ecology, and Fontaine was there performing, and we totally hit it off. I think we spent the entire time together, which was fantastic. So the other day, he and I we were having a chat, and we got into a discussion. Fontaine is an amazing musician, and we got into this discussion that I realized I stopped him, and I was like, okay, we can go into this totally, but I want to go into this on the podcast. So this is episode 61, and what we're going to be talking about is really getting the fuck out of the way. In other words, getting out of your lower fear-paced ego and into something beautiful. And I'll explain exactly. But to get to what we're going to talk about, first and foremost, Fontaine, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Fontaine?
Oh, okay. I am a musician who is seeking to be less of a musician and more music. So that is kind of my main goal and aim in life. But I'm in the regular world viewed as a professional musician who is a producer, a songwriter, performer, etc., etc., as we say. And yeah, I don't know I'm not the kind of person who likes to say like who I've worked with and what I've done. I've done a lot. I've worked with a lot of people, many of them famous, well known, others less well known, less famous. But that's not me. So I'm music. Yeah, that's what I.
All around the world, even, right?
All over
Because
the
you
world.
currently live, I mean, obviously people can tell by our accents that we're not European, even though we
No,
live in Europe.
exactly.
But you're currently living in Germany, and you have for many years, but you've also lived in Italy, and you're originally from the States,
Yes,
if I remember.
I continue to travel around the world doing, luckily my job allows me to be all over the place because people still want to have music everywhere. So I take advantage of that. And it brings me around. When I was younger, that was one of the most exciting things when I found out that, like, you travel to an unknown place and people will put food on your plate and they'll make a bed for you just because you can sing them a nice song or something, or you're willing to share your experience with them, to make music with them or share music with them. And it's been my real passport. Music has been my main passport, and I feel very grateful for that.
And even when we first met, I remember that it wasn't just your traditional kind of concert. I mean,
No,
this was a festival that was all connected to ecology and green thinking
yeah,
and earth and all these pieces. And you had brought this music that really did express and connect to that type of
sure.
work. Do you find that your work I mean, obviously, like you said, you do the traditional musician in so many ways, but do you also find that your work, I guess my better question is, how did you get into this sort of more connective type of music?
Mm. There's just a natural process when I would say this. I would say every musician goes through it, but certainly isn't the case. But at least in my case, it was that, I'm trained as a young musician to be a professional and, no music theory, know all of these things, the ins and outs of music. But that's not really why I started making music. There was already a, let's say, a spiritual connection. There was always something more undefined that kept me interested in music. And as you go along, just as probably as a child, when you get into school or something like that, you know everything about the world that you really need to know, and then you go to school. Yeah, you know what I mean. And, and then they screw everything up, and then you spend the rest of your life trying to get back to what you actually knew all along in the beginning. Yeah, at some point. And when the world of music is also like that, you realize you're like, wait, what have I been doing all this time? You know what I mean? Actually, I don't do music to be in the charts. I don't do music to be on television. I don't, it never was that. You know what I mean? And when you start to realize why you do music, it becomes this deep personal connection that you have with universal consciousness, and you want to be able to share that. And so the music that you create begins to um, embody this concept, this feeling, and you begin to share that with other people, and you see that it begins to open these feelings, and this it opens up something within people, and you realize why you actually do music, yeah, and not you know
I have to say, I love the struggle that you're having with the words.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, no, don't apologize, because I think that that's exactly the root core of it. I mean, the difficulty about the work that we all do, as you said, tapping into the universal consciousness, tapping into the earth consciousness also, right? Not just the cosmos, although that's one part of it, but
Right,
also those deep rhythms of what is the natural world flowing within us as well as around
right.
us. And I always struggle with this word thing. I was doing a botanical tarot card reading the other day, and I always warn people when I do them that I sound like I'm hiccuping or struggling, and it's because we're trying to translate through us and put our human understanding on concepts that the natural world, the plant world, are bringing to us. And I'm sure that the music, seeing as how really musicality is the core essence of the way that we experience the world. I mean, it all comes through that sound, that rhythm, that tonality. I can imagine that it must be difficult to try to put this into words.
Well, music is a language in and of itself, so I mean
Mhm.
it describes itself.
Or language is a musicality.
Language is you could look at it that way as well. I mean, it doesn't need to be translated, or let's say, if it's very difficult to translate it into a human language that is, yeah. I mean, we always say that talking about music is it's difficult. It's difficult.
Absolutely. And you were telling me the other day about an experience that you recently had that for you is like the pinnacle of when you have the ability to do this publicly. It's something you do a lot
Right.
privately. And I have to remember for myself that I want to ask you about your kind of daily practices,
Hmm.
because we have some things in common that I think are really great. But before I get there, so that people can really understand, you were telling me about a concert that you recently did that
Right.
was kind of like no concert. It's not your traditional concert. What was different about this concert?
Um, this was in Denmark, in Copenhagen, in a beautiful church, the Domkirke, and it was. I mean, it wasn't a concert in the classical sense. It wasn't like people came and they're like, we're going to, hear something specific. Yeah, like they're going to be playing Beethoven's Fifth or something or whatever. Um, they came to interact with the room, the space, and those who were on stage, for lack of a better word, channeling this music. Yeah, and that's something that I think for myself, that's daily. That's part of my daily practice. But to be able to share that with a large group of people in that way is something that we rarely get to do as musicians, because there's always just like you have a prepared program and you have this and there are the expectations of entertainment and this kind of thing. That weighs very heavy on us. You know what I'm saying? As performers, the word itself is performance. Yeah,
Yeah.
and this wasn't a performance in the classical sense. It's just like it was a more of a collaborative effort. Yeah, and I've done interactive concerts with and even when I do my regular shows, it's like I like to interact with the people. But at this level, it was something that was not like, okay, put your hands up and sing with me and that kind of interaction. More it was like unspoken. This underlying communication that was happening, that was just mind-blowingly beautiful. Yeah, and everybody felt it in the room, and that was very, very exciting, but also very humbling. Yeah, because you realize at that point you're not. I mean, there was nothing prepared. People, there were also some technical problems that kind of forced us as musicians to kind of take over the program in the most pure way possible. And I think that was great because it caught everybody off guard enough that there were no things like, oh, I have time, I'm going to play what I had prepared, because what I had prepared wasn't going to work. You know what I'm saying? So you just had to, like, you put yourself there, and it was like, okay, let this in, get out of the way and let it in. You know what I'm saying? And give it further along to the people. And it was great. I'm not sure if that answered anything about your question or the experience.
It
I'm
did. Well,
rambling.
it did
I'm
a little.
rambling
It
because
did, but I'm going to go deeper into it
okay, please do.
because and again, and this is for everybody also who's listening to understand that as we go deeper into these connections, which go beyond the human into the more than human world, into what we call other kin, and you're trying to. I see now. I'm even struggling. You're trying to recognize that you are a part of this,
Mhm.
right? There's always humanness coming in to whether you're writing or whether you're creating a beautiful piece of music, there's humanness. But in what you're talking about, it's that space also where you give yourself permission to get out of the way
Yes.
while still being present.
Yeah.
So you don't relinquish control,
No, no.
but more of create this beautiful co-creative dance where that universal consciousness, as you were saying, or depending on where you are, I'm sure that and I'm putting words in your mouth, so please feel free to correct me afterwards, but I feel like there's probably moments where you feel like you're connecting to that universal consciousness. There's probably also moments where you feel like you're channeling in some other type of, like, plants
Sure.
or other beings that are there and are coming to you and are saying, hey, I feel that you're open to this. I want to participate in what you're
Absolutely, you're
doing.
making yourself available to these forces. Yeah, the universal consciousness. It could be, you're touching a stone, or you're the whatever is in that room. You're allowing yourself to be the tool for that energy. Yeah, you know what I mean. And it's something that is it's most people don't do it because it can be very frightening. Yeah, it can be very frightening. You said you're not relinquishing control. You're just making yourself available and for the collaboration. Yeah.
And how do you feel like, and again, it's okay to struggle with the words, but talk to me more about that collaboration, because I think that that's the most exciting part. Obviously, in it, there's an intuition that you're probably following. But when you think about it now as you're sitting, and you could describe it in feelings, in technicalities, in how does it work? How does it feel?
Damn,
What
I
do you
wish I knew.
experience?
I could probably write some books about it and make a lot of money. It's how does it work? I mean, when the process of getting into deep meditation, for example, is something you're probably very familiar with, obviously. And you know that you said it earlier, the ego, the fear-based ego, yeah, which is always constantly criticizing and sticking its nose in where it doesn't need to be sticking its nose. You know what I mean? And it's very similar to that part. You're shutting that off. As soon as you start shutting that off, um, another part of you awakens and is very, very, like I said, open and available. Yeah. And so it's daily practice learning how to shut the one part off and invite the other one in. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I mean, I'm not sure if that answers your question either, but I mean, for me,
No,
I,
that
I don't, I
definitely
don't, I
does.
don't have, I don't have an exact formula for how that works because it's something that I work on constantly, daily. You know what I mean? So um, but once that channel of communication is open, literally, then because that ego is still always going to creep in. It's always like you push it outside the door, and it's still like, I want to come in though. Wait, let me in. I want to see what's going on. Wait a minute, you're not having fun without me, are you? You know what I mean? And you're just like, just
Right.
kid, you bother me. You know what I'm saying? You're just like, move along. but so it's a process. You're constantly listening, but once you're in, and you just let the magic happen. You know what I mean? You just
Mhm.
it's not you anymore. It's coming from where it's coming. You know what I mean? And you just have to be there to be the antenna and let that and then the amplifier for that energy. Yeah.
Yeah, you were mentioning earlier how you said like it's that daily practice, and that daily practice I have found serves different functions. One is this is really it's unusual feeling. It could be scary.
Yes.
So the daily practice in first helps you kind of get used to the idea that
Exactly.
oh, there's this like non-human way of interacting with these beings
Hmm.
that actually makes sense and I can let that flow. So one of it is just even bringing into your sphere of consciousness the fact that this is even possible because I think
Exactly.
if you don't without that
That's
practice,
a big part of it. Yes. Yeah.
it's a big part of it. And then the other part of it I think is also, you know, I think there's multiple parts of it. One is that. Another one is also you kind of purifying and working with your own how do I say this? Like the purity of your feelings, your intentions. Because like you said, we're getting rid of that lower based ego into the awareness
Hmm.
ego or that conscious ego
Hmm.
that is the conscious ego that's more of oh okay let me open this over here and ooh let me bring this part of his memories into it and that's kind of like the conductor of your internal
Right.
orchestra but that
Very
is
much so.
doing it from a pure intention of ooh collaboration yeah
Right.
let me bring these like let me bring up his 17, 20 years of experience with this instrument
Yep.
and I'm going to move it help his fingers sort of flow through it so that
Yep.
he does this piece and I'm going to get this little stuff that was bothering him earlier I'm going to put it into a box like the aware ego does all these things for us
Right.
where the lower base ego like you said is kind of saying no like you're going to screw up and
It's
don't
just,
do that
it just
because you
it's
don't
standing in your way. It's a hindrance.
Ex-
That's it. It's just you standing
exactly.
in your way. Yeah.
And I think the other part of it is, I was saying, we were talking about this earlier before we started to record, which is I find that almost in everything in life, and especially in this type of work, the more I do something, the more I feel comfortable as my own level of expertise, not in comparison to anybody else,
Hmm.
but like my personal comfort and expertise,
Yeah.
the easier it is to step out of the way,
Yes.
to allow this to flow through me and to kind of like it's like like any jazz musician knows you listen to the music you hear what's happening you hear the rhythm and depending on your instrument okay I'm going to step into this now and I'm going to step out of this now and I'm still a vital part even
I
if
think it's
I only step in for a second.
you just learn the more the more you know what you don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is this thing of also you realize we go through life when we amass our skills as musicians or artists or whatever in any area, we make the mistake of thinking that it's only really our doing. Like you said, it's the fear based ego that says, "Well, you did this, and this is your accomplishment." And not to belittle any of that, but that's coming from somewhere, and it's superhuman. It's not coming. It's beyond you. It's bigger than you. You know what I mean?
Right.
So once you come to grips with that, um, and you have to go for a while before you realize where the real source is. Once you realize that, then it's easy to just there say, well, take over. You do it. I've just been kind of attaching my name to this. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm driving the meat package here. But you know what I'm saying? But
Right.
this but once you've learned that it's the source is from much higher space. You know what I'm saying? Then it's easier to let go of it and say, okay, I'm a partner in this. It's not me. I'm just a partner in the game. You know what I mean? So
Right.
a collaborative.
Do you find that in your experiences are there specific types of we're going to use different words so that way you can find the one that feels best for you energies or types of consciousness or particular beings like for example I have specific plants that I work with a few that I work with quite regularly. Like for those that are on video right behind me, there's a Dracaena, and this is the one
Mhm.
I work with on a movement perspective. And
Okay.
so, kind of similar to what you're saying, I can feel this even just sitting here. It doesn't have to be dance, like stand up and dance around the room. I can, since no name Dracaena, as I call Key, but
Okay.
because Key refuses to give me a name. But that's another story altogether.
I'm looking
Anyways,
at you.
the way since No Name Dracaena and I started working, I have realized how much I had censored my sense of movement
Okay.
and had reserved, and how much freer my thinking is and my capacity to comprehend,
Hmm.
because I allow myself to move. So even when I'm sitting here talking to you, for those that are watching on the video, and if you're listening to the audio, I'll tell you about it. My hands are moving a lot.
Yeah.
My body is like, I can feel my torso move, and that a lot of that I can feel very clearly that's coming from what Key has helped me unlock, and also Key's participation in this conversation. So there's that one specific entity, as opposed to when I work with Spider Plant, who's sitting off to the side over here. It's very different. It's much more no nonsense. It's much more direct.
Right.
And but even so, what has left the impression in me, and I realize it now as I'm outside doing things or I'm in any kind of context, is that I once again move much more freely. And I realize that without that movement, unusual or certain comprehensions are harder for me. It's much easier for me to feel the expansion of my senses and the
Hmm.
understanding that comes through those senses, or feel things coming through those senses, thanks to that movement. But that's it's a lot of it is the work and the practice and the devotion of this
This plant.
work that Josenia and I are doing together. Do you find in your work that there are specific types of energies or entities or specific beings that you work with more often, or is it usually more how is it?
I often, yeah, yes. That first of all is very fascinating what you're saying, and I can totally identify with that. And I mean, that reminds me a lot of the practice of connecting with let's say for example planets. Yeah,
Hmm.
planetary magic, for example, or something along the lines of that, um, or specific plants and their correspondence to planets or whatever. Yeah, and that's something. Yeah, yeah, that does happen very quite often. Yes, and I will often sit and try and connect as deeply as I can with Venus, for example. Yeah, yeah, and or yeah, it varies. It varies, obviously. Yeah, but yes, definitely. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything one specifically that is Venus is very much in use. Yeah.
Help me understand things.
Help, yeah, help, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, because I mean, yeah, definitely. That's funny that you would say that because that's something I start most of the ritual my ritual practice was like, please guide me, let me know let me understand what this is all about. You know what I'm saying? Let me know something. Yeah, just give me something. And it always does. It always gets something. And the same
Right.
when I'm outside. I spend a lot of time outside and take an instrument with me, you know, and and communicate with the plant and animal world in a way that because it's there. You know, there's so much valuable information there to be gleaned. So it's yes, definitely. It's and I try and I don't say I try and integrate it into my music. Like I said, I open myself up and say, look, well, you want to play something? You know what I'm saying? I'm here. My hands are here. The plant can't play the instrument, so I become the instrument of the plant, or I become the instrument of the stone. I become the instrument of, you know, um, the fire, whatever element or whatever force needs to manifest itself through me. I put myself there and say, I'm yours. We always put these things to use in our human world. It's like, yeah, it's a stone, it's a mineral. We have to, we can make this out of it. We can make that out of it. It's a plant. We can make this out of it. We can do this. why don't we find ourselves making ourselves available to this world in the same way? You
Oh, what a beautiful way of saying it. I
know,
love that. I love that so much.
Mhm.
Okay, I know that I'm sure everybody else is, but I think we're ready to hear something. But before we do that, I just want to take a quick break and share with you one of our eco-conscious business partners. Supporting them is supporting us and doing and being able to bring more of these amazing types of interviews for you. I think we can all agree that music is the true universal language. In fact, what we think of as language is actually musicality. And I would argue that plants may be the greatest composers of all. By using the music of the plants device, plants are now able to share their healing and communicate with us in a language we can understand. Music of the Plants now has different devices to experiment with, whether you're a musician looking to play along with your plant friends, a healer who wants to enhance their practice, or simply curious. In the show notes, you'll find a link to purchase the right device for you, such as this Bamboo M. There are also all sorts of fun extras, such as downloadable interspecies music and plant music merchandise. So click on the link to the music of the plants in the show notes to discover how you can start making music with your plants today. For those that are here watching, like those that are watching, there are like, it looks like there's like spikes towards you, but I know that they're not
this
spikes.
is,
What is that in front of you? You're not in an Iron
I am
Maiden.
not in
What's
an
going
Iron
on?
Maiden. I've always wanted to be an Iron Maiden, but they did not. But
I know.
bad
Well,
joke,
you
bad
do.
joke, bad joke.
No. Do you do know that Iron Maiden is my favorite band
I
in the
do.
world?
I remember that. I did. You know,
So,
because
an Iron Maiden, for those of you that don't know, an Iron Maiden is the box with spikes inside of it that they used to like use as a torture device, by the way.
exactly,
But, or kind of like, yeah. So,
very cool band.
but those are not a torture device. What is that, Fontaine? What
This
is there?
instrument, and I'm sure maybe I could lift it up in a way that's not going to.
For the people who are watching the video, and for if you're listening to the audio, it has all these beautiful kind of
These
like,
are tiny.
what are they called? Those little thumb, wumwhat's it called?
Well, so this
Thumb,
is some people call it the thumb piano, known as the
thumb piano.
kalimba, but the mother of the kalimba is a much older instrument called the imbira, yeah, which was created in Africa well over 3,000 years ago, and this particular imbira was designed and created by a man named Bill Wesley in America, and built by another man named Patrick Hadley. And it's called the Arrayambir, and what makes it interesting is the way that the notes are laid out in a very unusual. They're not laid out in a chromatic. If anybody's familiar with music, you know you start with C, C sharp, D, D, D sharp, and that way they're laid out in an arrangement that is, yeah, not that. Let's just put it that.
Which I
Yeah, exactly.
and this, which is something that we've lost, to be honest, like in the sense that as I work more and more with plants, one of my dreams is that the music of that we will eventually get to a music of the plants device that has completely different note spacing,
Yeah.
because it feels like, so obviously most music is in major scale 440 A440.
Hmm.
Sure, we have some 442 432 stuff
Hmm.
and some other, even a 538 now that's coming in,
Hmm.
and so there's all these other frequencies that are coming in, but when it comes to the scale,
Hmm.
we are very limited. In my experience, when I was working with plants and some musicologists, and we found that plants really preferred more Lydian and
Hmm.
microlydian and macrolydian, mixolydian, excuse me,
Yeah.
mixolydian scales, which unless you work like you're a jazz musician, you've probably never even heard of and didn't know they exist. But other kinds of spacing to create
Sure.
the notes, such as Fibonacci spacing,
Exactly.
or even smaller micro scaling, like not even
Microtonal.
just half
Yeah.
notes, but like atonal stuff. I always put the plants in the chromatic, but it's still giving you the notes that we know in our traditional
Sure. Of
scales.
course.
It, I would love, I feel like we've lost our musicality,
Hmm.
our ability to really express ourselves through our musicality. Some part of it has been lost in the fact that all of our instruments have been synced. Like all our modern day instruments have been
Yeah.
synced
Hmm.
to these scales.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you really want to get into these alternative, again, more than human, we need to get out of the human scales of music
Sure.
only.
Sure. I mean, the natural harmonic series does line up with scale. It's been tempered, and there's a lot of discussion and scientific evidence about why we appreciate the scales and all the way they are, and but it is a an artificial playground, that we've
Hmm.
made, just because it simplifies communication between musicians and musical cultures. But there is something lost in translation for sure. Yeah, because
Hmm.
no doubt about that. Yeah. Anyway, this is
So tell us more.
the array imbira. It is a wonderful instrument. I haven't had it that long actually, and I discovered it probably a little over a decade ago with a friend of mine who actually had one, and I'd been debating for many years whether I should allow myself to have one built for me. There aren't many in the world. There's only like about maybe 500 or so in the world at the moment. And I just decided this year that I'm going to do that for myself, and I did, and I'm very grateful that I did, because I am absolutely. It's become a very good friend.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
So
So play. Come on, you have to play
I'll
something
play
for us.
something.
Now we're dying. Now we want to know. We want
Yeah,
to hear it.
and this is just coming from somewhere, so I'm just going to let it.
Yeah, let's do this. Let's
Yeah.
let's take a second
Yes, definitely.
and let's you take your time you need. Give yourself a few seconds, connect into whatever it is that you need to connect.
Exactly.
And when you feel, would love to hear it. I'm so excited. I feel all like, oh, how do you put words to it? I can feel it all around my my chest, my heart center. How do you, what? Meh. See, words, words. How do you
Word.
put words back into this? Like, I don't want to, oftentimes when I teach, I have certain dynamics. And when I do plant music healing sessions, also this happens. When I do a plant music healing session, I, at the very end, tell people, so I tell people before we start it,
Yeah.
that at the end, I'm not going to talk about it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know how oftentimes when you do a healing session, you
Mm-hmm.
always ask people, do you have any questions? Do you need anything? And
Exactly.
I am the complete opposite. I say to them, look, what we're going to ask all the questions that you can think about
Ahead
before,
of time. Yeah.
but at the end, I'm just going to leave you. And my suggestion, I'm going to like log off. And my suggestion for you is to just sit in this for as long as
I'm the
possible
same way.
and not talk to anybody.
It's I do exactly the same thing. Yeah.
Because I find that we try so hard to convey the human like constraints of thought processes
Yes.
rather than allowing those feelings to just sink in.
Right. And
And so it's,
yeah.
go ahead. Sorry.
And act and allow them to activate what they something within us. We just
Yeah.
they always.
Yeah. Our quest to understand.
Yeah.
I just had a group that was here in Damanhur for my Nurture Your Nature retreat that I do, and it was so amazing. One of the people who is a very inquisitive, curious person in general is like one of these people that likes to know, so she
Mhm.
asks a lot of questions,
Yeah.
and which is great. And she wanted to go into the temples of humankind to do an individual meditation. And originally, she had picked a hall, and then there was this other hall that somebody suggested that she go into, and she was like, oh, I didn't really like that hall. And then something in her woke up and was like, why didn't I like that hall? Like there was a resistance.
Hmm.
And then it turned out that that hall, the meditate, so all the halls have the ability for you to have a meditation,
Right.
a guided meditation
Hmm.
to do them.
Hmm.
This is the only hall that the entire time you sit in silence for an hour. You sit in silence. And I was so proud of her and like so impressed because she was like, this goes against everything that I think about in relation to how I experience. And she's a dancer by
Hmm.
training.
Hmm.
She's done a lot of movement for healing, is the
Yeah.
work that she does today. So she was expecting to do a guided meditation where she would do this thing. And she's like, but I can feel this resistance coming up for me. And so I'm going to go into this hall and just sit in that resistance for an hour.
Perfect.
And I was like, wow, that's
Do it.
that's powerful.
That is.
Like I can feel the emotion of that. And I think that's exactly the same thing for this type of music and for this type of connection that for you express through music. For me, it's through movement. For others, it might be through poetry or artwork or drawing or something that comes out of it, is the ability for you to sit in that space of pure presence and allow it to flow through.
Getting the fuck out of the way.
Getting the fuck out of the way. That's it. It's getting the fuck, and yet not disappearing, because we've
No, no,
talked
no,
about this a
no,
few
no, no,
times.
no.
You don't disappear. You are a part of it, but it's getting the fuck out of the way to allow that
It doesn't.
to
And
start to
to
come through,
witness, to bear, to witness. Yeah. To
to witness, and then eventually
and
participate.
participate. Yeah. Of course. I mean, it's getting out of the way. It's certainly not. Not leaving the room. You want to be there because you're there to
Yeah,
you're there for the experience, and you need to be there. You need to be present. You just don't need to be standing in the way when when the communication is flowing. You just don't want to be.
right.
That's it.
That's it. That's it. And that's what I feel like we really gain from embodying our plantness is our ability to be that, to be present,
Yeah.
to be, and then to know that space of when do I lean into it and allow this connection, like being also very humbled and pure and being able to say, I want you, whomever entity that I'm feeling around me, or entities or
Hmm.
beings that are around me, I want you to use me. Like I want to be there
Hmm.
for you. So I want to be in service to you. So use me. And then also when you hear that tap that is different, that says, no, I want to do this with you.
Yeah.
Let me be the one to fuel your sensations, your perceptions, your um your experiences, your memories.
Yeah,
Let me tap into all of
sure.
this and be and then from there we build something together.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Like I said, it's just
Such
it's a question of you making available your experiences, your abilities, and making the offer and saying, "Look, here, what can you do with this? What do you want to do with this? Whatever that force or that energy or that entity is." Yeah, I'm making you an offer here. I'm this is what I can bring you. Yeah, this is what I've experienced. This is what I am. Here it is available for you to use, and be open to that communication. And then it's getting out of the way, and you say, "Look, I mean, it's like, you come in with a bag of Legos, and you want to, say, put them on the table, and you say, like, I want to, see what you build with these Legos. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I don't want to build something for you. I want to know, because when you allow this entity or these beings, these forces to manifest through you, yeah, that's there for you to learn something. That's something there. It's a return gift for you to say, look, okay, this is what there's something that it's observing me. Oh, sorry, it's observing me. I know
Somebody wanted to
somebody
chime into
wanted to
that
chime in on that.
conversation.
Yeah, it's it's a process of you giving, and it builds something with you, with your experiences, so so that it may inform you about things about yourself that you might not be aware of. You know what I mean? That's also the
Right.
process. Or things that something you need to know, something you simply need to be informed about. Yeah, that you can't inform yourself about. You need it's anyway. Maybe I'm rambling again.
No, it's beautiful because I also, as you were saying it, I was thinking about um, how much this changes you as a person doing this work and how much, how do I say this? So in Dom and Her, we talk a lot about something called these missing archetypes. They're archetypes, like universal archetypes of that the human being had access to,
Mm-hmm.
that we've lost access
Yes.
to, or at least we've used them badly.
Yep.
I think we've really kind of lost their true
Mm.
essence, and most of them are connected to relationships in some way.
Right.
So there's about 20 missing archetypes that are connected to different types of relationships or relationality and
Mm-hmm.
such. And that we understand based on our research and our study here that the plant world holds the memory. They remember. So can remember when we were all united and we all had access to these.
Yes.
And in my experience, that as we connect back in and we do this type of work, like you're saying, I feel, and I've experienced this personally as being a person that is, nobody who listens to me is a stranger to the fact that I say I am probably the most positive negative person, because that's the way my mind works. And like I was super judgmental for a long period of my life. I struggled a lot with making friends. As a matter of fact, I at one point like ended a very important relationship in my life because I realized I had no friends. I just had that person. And
Yeah.
so started me on a quest to create friendships because I didn't know how to create them,
Yeah.
which is another story that one day I'll share. But the
Mm-hmm.
point being is, I find that through this type of connection and experience, I have such a deeper well of understanding, of empathy, of compassion, of relationship, of curiosity. Like all these things get stimulated. And like you said, I know when to get the fuck out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when instead to lean into it, or at
Mm-hmm.
least I can not know, but I can
You can
feel
feel it.
into that. And it changes my relationships with people, with
Yes.
my work,
Yes.
with
Yes.
basically it has enhanced all of my relationships because now, as we said, language is a type of musicality. So therefore I approach all of my relationships and the way that I speak as that interaction of musicality, and knowing that the dialogue is always made from the call and the return, the response, the listening, the deep
Deep
listening,
listening.
which is, I think, what makes me feel like it's really helped me even as a coach and a mentor, because I come from that place of, I want to, like you said, I want to be of service to you, and therefore I want you to use what's in me. And so as you speak, I listen deeply so that I can emote or speak or express in whatever way needs to come out what serves you in this moment, and back and forth in that way.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
It's good because after I say it, I forget
Yeah,
what I said. So luckily,
we've
there's a
got it on.
recording
We've
of
got it
it.
recorded.
We have it recorded. Okay, so I want to, because I know we could go on for hours and hours and hours and hours. So I want to leave people actually with your music. So before I do that, because I would love for you to play a little bit more and then we'll just close it from there
Okay.
so that people can stay. And I advise you, listen, if you're like listening to this, when you hear this music, just when it finishes, just stay in it. Stay in that space for a little bit. Let whatever needs to wash into you and come through you, come through you. But before we do that, Fontaine, where can people listen to find more of your music, listen to you?
Oh yeah, that question. I have. Yeah, I'm everywhere and nowhere. So I just kind of show up, and I do have some music on the regular standard streaming platforms. There's an album that is in the meantime 12 years old. It doesn't really represent where I'm at now as a musician. There will be some new material coming very soon. Just if you can remember the name Fontaine Burnett, it will show up in your life sometime.
Oh no, it will be in the show notes.
It'll
So
it'll it'll
I just tell them to do a search for you.
it'll show up. Just I'm hard to I'm easy to find but hard to keep track of.
Well, we're gonna get that website of yours updated because
Oh my
this is
god.
the kind of stuff that's so like amazing
the
that we need to
the Jurassic
people.
website, yeah, of course.
Yes, people need to hear this, what you're creating right
Exactly.
now,
Yes, they do. You're right. I
and
feel the same.
and you don't publish enough about it.
You're right. You're right. I'm guilty. Guilty as charged.
All right, so I'll put your name. I'll send them to your old website. I'll tell them that they just need to search for you, and I'm gonna poke for everybody listening. I'm gonna keep poking at him so that he puts more of this type of stuff out, and so that we can all experience it. Atane, can you please lead us out with whomever else I call in anyone else that wants to participate in
In.
this, and let's.
I'm going to stand up.
You do it.
I know it's probably doesn't look very sexy, but this is easy.
Thanks for listening to this episode of ReConnect with Plant Wisdom. Intro and outro music by Steve Shuley and Poinsettia from The Singing Life of Plants. So join me, Tigrila Gardenia, and my plant collaborators next time on ReConnect with Plant Wisdom.